Hey, my name is Sruti. I'm an author and spiritual teacher, and I write and talk about my experience of spiritual awakening and chronic pain. In 2018, I had an allergic reaction to an ear piercing that radically altered my appearance and my life. The condition, which is rare, is called erythromelalgia and feels like you have a hot frying pan stuck to your ear and face. I was also on prednisone for 6 years, which radically altered my appearance for the duration of the illness. Most doctors didn't think I would recover, but that is why I'm sharing what I have to share, because it helped me get through it, and it can help you get through your problems too. Hope you enjoy. Okay, kids, let's play a game. If I say the word witch, what is the first color you think of? Probably black, isn't it? And if I say the word guru, what is the first color you think of? Probably white, isn't it? Now, let's say the word witch again. What is the first gender you think of? Probably female, right? And if I say the word guru again, what is the first gender you think of? Probably male. Now, this is not an accident. This is an unconscious bias that affects our society on a very deep, primitive level. Let's keep going and talk about some unconscious associations with the colors white and black. If I were to say white, you might associate that color with things that are good, high, holy, clear, positive. If I were to say the word black, you might associate that color with things that are evil, negative, bad, scary, painful. So, in my personal opinion, I believe that our fear of the color black is actually one and the same with our fear of pain. And we all know why I do the work I do, which is to reimagine how we view pain in society. As you've heard me talk about many times before, since the times of Adam and Eve, we've seen a fear of pain influence our unconscious behaviors, not just towards each other, but between the genders. Adam displays this behavior when, upon being cast out of the Garden of Eden, as the myth goes, which really is a metaphor for Adam discovering the darker, painful aspects of life, things like illness, death, suffering. He did not have the spiritual tools to handle that pain or understand the role of pain in life itself. So his best option to deflect that pain away from himself is to simply blame it upon Eve. Because Eve ate from the tree of knowledge. Eve was tempted by the snake. Eve is the reason I'm suffering. And blaming her temporarily makes me feel better. But unfortunately, by blaming Eve, makes her into an object of that blame, and therefore an object rather than a spiritual being. What I mean by spiritual being is that beneath the layers of the human being, the mind, the feelings, the body, even the consciousness itself, there exists a pure seeing. This is a formless consciousness. And Adam and Eve have equal access to this formless consciousness that exists behind all of the layers of who they think they are in this life. And those are the tools that Adam didn't have. He did not have the spiritual tools to understand the role of pain in life itself. And it's not that pain is an obstacle. It's not that pain is wrong or bad. Pain, to some extent, is always going to be a part of three-dimensional life on the planet Earth. That is part of the human experience. What is bad, though, is pushing it away, blaming others, deflecting it, and actually ignoring it as the signpost that it is. Is pain a problem, though, is the question. I know it's something I've continuously had to ask myself through more than a decade of chronic pain. Is pain a problem? Pain is neutral, actually. I have found that pain is simply an eraser. Pain comes in, it becomes so severe that it starts to block and shut out and erase all the layers of consciousness that we think we know and all the layers of ourselves that we think we are. But my question to you is, if something disappears in front of you, is it really you? Or are you the one watching those layers disappear? So what I'm trying to say is, when I've been in severe pain, even to the point of losing consciousness, I've watched as thoughts disappear and there's just silence. I've watched as all feelings have disappeared. No fear, no sadness, no feelings can exist alongside the intensity of that pain. And I've been to the point where I've lost control over my own body. I've been writhing around on the floor. I've been losing consciousness. If you lose control of your body, is it really you? Or are you the one who has the sense of losing that control? If you even begin to lose consciousness, ordinary eyesight, vision, hearing, even your sense of being alive, of breathing, if you can lose all of those subtle things, who are you behind all of that to know that you have lost them? That is a very important question that I believe everyone should ask from a very young age, and would, I believe, change our relationship to not just colors like white and black, but also what the implications of what that means for our global society, how we treat each other, how we treat other races, and how we treat women. So let's go back to the color black. That sense of unconsciousness, that unknown, that loss of control, that association is with darkness. At night, when it's dark, we're afraid because we don't know what's coming at us. We don't know what the threats are. And that fear of the unknown is sometimes actually greater than whatever is lurking out there that might harm you, like a wild animal. When you're watching a horror movie, sometimes the fear of what you cannot see is scarier than when they bring on camera the actual entity or alien or whatever it is that's trying to scare you. Sometimes you're scared all the way up until they show you the alien or the monster or whatever it is, and then you're like, oh, well, that was dumb. So it's really this fear of the unknown, of what pain might exist, of that loss of control that scares us the most. And that is associated deeply with the blackness of unconsciousness, the blackness of night, that dark threat where we feel like we can't see and we can't know. It is totally natural. It will probably never go away. But that darkness is also the womb, if you will. It is that feminine place before birth where all creative possibilities exist, and that place that we return to upon passing from this body. So to touch on Adam and Eve again for a moment, what Adam does not do is allow pain to erase the false layers of who he thinks he is to find out who he truly is from that place, looking out. You never see yourself as an object because you are not an object. You are not a man. You are not a woman. I know that sounds odd to most people, but you are the formless consciousness observing your knowledge of being male or female in this lifetime. Now, from this place, this is the source of all creative possibility. Like I said, the womb of true strength, true knowledge, and a deep intuition that knows how to handle whatever situation you find yourself in. And if it's painful, it's probably very challenging. So rather than blame others when pain arises in our lives, it is my recommendation to take a moment, allow pain to exist without putting a story on it, without thinking it's bad, without trying to push it away, without blaming others, and allow it to reinforce that contact with the most pure part of yourself, which is also the source of God and life itself. And from this place, meet that pain with strength that is literally beyond you. That is how I have withstood and walked through every difficult circumstance in my life and handled it in a way that was both graceful and appropriate. It's how I found the right path to walk myself out of difficult situations and the strength to withstand the ones I couldn't avoid. It does also, over time, put you in constant contact with the source of intuition that everyone has inside of themselves, whether they consider themselves intuitive or not. And that source of intuition will always show you the path for your highest, greatest good with the least amount of suffering. Now, we won't totally eliminate pain, like I said, on this planet, because that's part of our experience, but we will radically change how we view pain, how we meet pain, and we will also take steps to find circumstances with the least painful outcome. Life doesn't put us here to suffer. God, if you will, the source of life, doesn't want us to come here and just suffer. We came here to experience the real source of life, which is love. Of course, the strange thing about pain is that it also deepens love, but having a fixation on pain is never why we came. Understanding the role of pain and how to move with rather than against pain is part of our technique for living our best life. I have found every time I have followed this method of allowing pain to simply put you back in contact with the true source of who you are, that my life has improved not just in small ways, but in magical, even miraculous ways. Life is actually magical, which is kind of the best side of what you might call a witch. So why are witches associated with the color black? And why are witches female? I am from Massachusetts. There was something called the Salem witch trials, and women were murdered. It is, of course, now part of Halloween and this fun tradition we all have. But spiritual women were actually murdered and branded as witches precisely because the power of the feminine, which is the power of the unknown, the darkness, the womb, was deeply feared, misunderstood, and vilified. And these spiritual women who spoke sort of the way I'm speaking now about the darkness, the womb, the unconsciousness, and the value of honoring those things, the darker aspects of life. Precisely because this was so powerful, they were viewed as a threat to the Catholic Church, vilified, and murdered. They were basically branded evil and put in a category with demons and the devil and things that might want to hurt you with pain. So that, of course, wasn't true. It has given rise to what many feminists and YouTubers are calling the witch wound, which we all have, which is the part of ourselves, that feminine part that acknowledges everything I just said, knows the power of it, but is afraid to embody it or speak it or talk about it or be it because of that fear of being vilified, outcast, misunderstood, and in a way murdered. By contrast, the color white has been associated with things that are considered holy, good, bright, godly. Jesus Christ is often depicted wearing white. White light is often depicted in a halo around his head. In other spiritual traditions around the world, like I mentioned earlier, gurus who are predominantly male are usually pictured wearing white. And there are even some traditions today. Like I have seen videos as recently as yesterday of prominent gurus or spiritual teachers in the New Age and in the modern spiritual traditions of, say, India, that say things like, you should never wear the color black because the color black will attract negativity to you. Now, this, to me, is just another obvious reflection of this same dichotomy, that black is bad and that white is good. I understand that in physics, the color white reflects light, whereas the color black absorbs light and energy. So the reasoning behind don't ever wear the color black is that it absorbs all of the energy around you, including potentially negative energies. However, in art, I have an art background, actually the color black contains all of the colors as well. When you mix all the colors together, you end up with some kind of really dark brown or black. And so actually, the color black is kind of a rainbow, if you think about it. By rejecting the color black, you don't often realize that you are also rejecting the full spectrum of rainbows. Now, I'm someone who has worn the color black probably every single day of my life since I can possibly remember, at least since middle school. I just love black pants. So the color black is always on me somewhere. I also just like the color. I like, when I paint, actually, a lot of people have this image in their mind of a white canvas that you can paint upon, like as if white is some kind of neutral color that you can envision your creativity. But when I see the color white, it's very loud, and I do literally go blank. But so I paint all of my canvases black and then paint a rainbow of colors on top of it, because the color black for me is like that womb, that birthplace of creativity, where I can more clearly not just see my ideas come to life, but in a true artistic practice, you are actually funneling and channeling art to come through you. You are not overlaying your art on the world. That art is being channeled through you to the world, much like a birthing process. This was something that took me a long time to learn as an artist. It was always my young understanding that I had to take what I saw in my mind and duplicate it onto a canvas, rather than a very different process of allowing what wants to come through to be expressed. Very different ways of approaching art. And I found that the art that I tried to overlay from my mind was always horrible. And the art that I allowed to flow through as a channeling and a self-expression was always both wonderful and better than I ever thought, because it included that touch of the divine. And the touch of the divine, not in art and life, which is art, is a co-creation, a true manifestation, not one where we make a vision board that we overlay onto life and force life to conform, because it won't, but one where we have ideas about what we want to see and create in our life, because we know they'd be good for us, but we allow the touch of the divine to come through and change it in just such a way where it's not just close to what we wanted, it's actually better, and in ways that we did not have control over. So this fear of loss of control that comes from this fear of pain is that everything's going to be worse if we let go of the reins. We were never taught to trust that life wants us to live our best lives and knows, even beyond what we think we know, how it will make us happy and what we might want to see in it. So if we allow that little bit of loss of control in the co-creation process, the process where we are contacting the divine and the divine is moving us, that dance between control and loss of control is where the best life and the best art lives. And to do that, you need to not be afraid of the color black, of the magic of witches, and of the power of women. Now let's talk about something else obvious for a moment. When we are afraid of and vilifying the color black and glorifying the color white, it just seems to me that there's a pretty obvious race problem here. So gurus I've seen speak publicly about how you should never wear the color black. Some of those teachers and gurus end up abusing people, by the way, and end up being more negative wearing their white clothing than a lot of people who are labeled goth and wear all black and who are highly positive people. The gurus say you should never wear the color black, but what if your skin is black and you can't take off your skin? You cannot get up one morning and decide, oh, a guru said I should never wear black, but I wear my skin every day, I'll just take it off. I don't know why this isn't more obvious. Why we still have people basically preaching these kinds of prejudices under the guise of spiritual enlightenment. To me, this is just reinforcing a hierarchy on the planet Earth where black is beneath the color white. And this just screams skin color problems to me. So I profoundly don't agree. I mean, people can say whatever they want to say, but I mean, this goes into like hate. So somehow the color black has become associated with race, with women, and with evil and negativity and bad things. Even in sexuality, the color white is seen as chaste and the color black is seen as promiscuous. So there is just, in terms of race and racism, sexism, the problem of associating these colors with these social attributes. To me, it's so deeply layered that it does go back to this problem of associating black with pain and death and darkness. It goes back to Adam and Eve. It goes back to how we are wired to approach life when we fear what we associate with the color black. So now imagine a different world in which we see pain as a tool and we embrace the divine feminine principles of allowing a certain amount of loss of control in our lives, where we don't fear pain, death, unconsciousness, but see them as tools, as transitions. This would be a world free of hierarchy. It would be a world free of blame, and therefore a world free of objectification. Hierarchy comes from placing objects in a ladder from good to bad, from white to black, from holy to unholy, and unfortunately from masculine to feminine. If we didn't fear pain, if specifically Adam had the tools to realize what pain really means for him, that it's there to show him his true strength and therefore also the source of him and Eve at the same time. That actually Eve isn't an object of blame. She is one and the same at the core of herself with him, and together they are actually united in real holiness, a real connection to the source of God and spirit within. That would be a world where hierarchies dissolve, where we cannot objectify each other, where we cannot place each other as objects in ladders of better or worse, higher or lower. It would radically transform our financial systems, our social systems, our medical systems. It would change how we relate to life itself. So the color black, the idea of witches, the fear of pain and darkness itself, as fun as it is on Halloween, is super important to transforming not just our local societies, but our global societies. We need to really be careful and notice our biases towards seemingly innocuous things like the color black. Realize where they come from, and realize that at the end of the day, no matter what video I make, it seems like all problems come back to this same original problem, the original sin of fearing pain in our lives, rather than realizing that pain is God's tool to help us know the true source of ourselves, the true source of life, and the true source of God, Him, Her, Itself. Happy Halloween. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to learn more about me, you can check out my website, which is www.meet-shruti.com, linked below. Also, since I am a vastly better writer than I am speaker, I'd highly recommend checking out my book, The Hidden Value of Not Knowing, also linked below on Amazon. And of course, I'm obligated to say you should like, subscribe, comment. See you next time.